as Martin already told in the interview, we know from literature that a lot of macro-level factors determine success of countries. And the two most important factors are money and the population. Countries with the highest amount of money, the richest countries, and the highest population, they will win more medals. And only those two factors, the GDP and population, already determine 50% of the international success of countries. But what we are interested in is what is the other 50%? Maybe it is culture, maybe it is politics, maybe it is the systems, education systems, but what we are interested in is what is the role of sports policy? How can a better sports policy contribute to a higher number of medals? And can it even contribute to a higher number of medals? So that's how our first Spliss project grew with the book, The Global Sporting Arms Race, that was published in 2008, where 6 nations were involved. So Belgium, Canada, Italy, the Netherlands, Norway, and the United Kingdom. And we jointly published this book, but after that project, we got so many questions from other countries that we decided to continue it. Now, during the same period, several other studies also developed, because it might seem strange, but despite the fact that so many nations invested so much money in elite sport, there did not exist a theoretical model of what is an elite sports policy. So during the same period, several other studies appeared from Barry Hullion, from Helmut Diegel, Bersgaard and his colleagues, our own study, Sven Andersen was a recent study in 2012, and also a lot of other studies at other levels, looking at the performance management of countries, the competitiveness from several researchers. All during that period, it advanced the research on elite sports policy. Now, after getting so many questions from nations to contribute and to be able to participate in a Spliss study, we decided to set up this so-called Spliss 2.0 study. The main purpose of the study is to increase the insights into the effectiveness and efficiency of elite sports policies and of nations, and the general elite sports climate for athletes, coaches, and their performance directors. The study took 3 years just to answer the question how complicated it is to make an international comparison. After 2008, we started with visiting countries because policymakers were interested. And from 2008 until 2010, we basically developed the sample of the different countries that participated. And then in 2011, each country started with data collection. They took a full year for that, but for some nations it was longer, just to collect the data on the model that we used, on which I will tell a little bit more later. And then September 2012, we started with the data analysis. The aim was to be completely ready by the time of this conference, but making an international comparison is not only so complicated, but each question gives you an answer that raises more new questions. And that's why it takes so long to get an in-depth analysis of that. On the question which countries could participate to that study, basically any country that wanted could participate in the study. But the conditions were twofold. First of all, they needed to have the funding or to have the staff that could collect all the data, and they needed to have access to the databases of, for example, their elite athletes, their coaches, and so on. And countries have been very creative in finding their ways to that. To give you one example, and you could call it innovation in research methodologies, but I already mentioned Brazil with her team. She did not have access to all the databases. It also did not really exist. So they contacted their athletes and coaches through Facebook, which I thought was a very good idea, and they reached over 400 elite athletes by doing it that way. Other countries like Switzerland had other innovative ideas. They bought iPads and they went to the training centers of athletes with 10 iPads and asked the athletes to complete the surveys just immediately after the training. And at the end of the project, they were given as an incentive to the elite athletes. So that were all very creative ideas of how to collect this huge amount of data that we wanted them to collect. There are 10 European countries involved in the study. Belgium, separated by Flanders and Wallonia because we do not have a national elite sports policy in Belgium. People can ask me more questions about that during the coffee break, but I will not go into depth on that. Denmark, Estonia, Finland, France, the Netherlands, Northern Ireland, as Simon already told, Portugal, Spain, and Switzerland. We have 2 Asian countries, South Korea and Japan, involved in the study. From Oceania, we have Australia. Unfortunately, New Zealand, who is not involved. We had long-time contacts with them, but they finally decided not to fund their researchers. And then from America, Canada, and Brazil. In terms of population and wealth, these countries do differ a lot. So we have 7 nations with a population that is smaller than 15 million inhabitants. So the countries that you can see on this list. We have 3 nations with a population between 15 and 40 million inhabitants, and then the bigger nations of our sample. So the question in our research is also, how do you deal with that? And to be honest, we are not yet at the point in our research that we can completely deal with this complexity of comparing nations. So sometimes the question is asked, are nations suitable units for comparison? Can you compare nations? Because aren't we comparing apples and oranges? And I would like to refer here to Hofstede, who wrote in the 1998 and wrote that popular wisdom deems that one cannot compare apples with oranges. But what do we mean by compare? Scientifically speaking, apples and oranges come under the general category of fruits and can be compared on many criteria, such as availability, price, color, vitamin content, or keeping quality. Comparing apples with oranges, he said, is okay as long as we possess a fruitology, a theory of fruits. And that was actually the key message of our research, that is, what is our theory of fruits, or what is our definition of an elite sports policy. Now, for the study, I will not go much in depth into the methods, but there are a few key points in our study. And the first one is the model itself. It consists, for the people who do not know it, it consists of 9 pillars. And what we basically did is, from a large amount of literature and from interviews with athletes, coaches, and performance directors, we concluded that we can cluster all the sports policy factors into 9 areas. Some people might cluster them into 6 areas or 12 areas. It doesn't matter, as long as it's all there. So the 9-pillar model, or the 9 pillars, are the financial support, or the inputs of an elite sports policy. The way it is all structured, pillar 2, the organization and the structure of an elite sports policy. Sports participation, because we assume that a broader sports participation can lead on the long term to more success. Talent identification and the development. Once the talents are identified, for example, from sports clubs, grow into regional competition, then to national competition, finally to the first international competitions. Once athletes start to perform, we call it pillar 5, the athletic and post-athletic career support. And then we have 4 other pillars, the coaches, the training facilities, the national and international competition, and the research. Now, the key point of our model is that we only look in this study at a national elite sports policy. We do not compare sports by sports. We do not compare why one athlete is more successful than another. We compare nations at a national policy level. And an interesting discussion we also had a few times in our consortium group and with other researchers is that we have not included the environment of an elite sports policy, the media and the sponsoring. And the reason for that is that it cannot actively be influenced by an elite sports policy. Now, in our Spliss 2 study, we tried to include it to some extent, but it requires separate studies to go into more depth on what sponsoring and media really means and could contribute to success. So, for each pillar, we developed critical success factors. And I just give this overview slide to show you that in total, what we have measured was 96 critical success factors. Originally, there were more, but we have clustered them a little bit more. And each critical success factor consisted of several sub-questions and sub-questions. So there were a total of 750 sub-elements that we have all brought together. I think this is one of the first key points of what we did with Spliss. And basically, the model refers to strategic management literature. How does a company develop in order to be successful? Well, here, how does a sport policy can develop in order to be successful? So it all refers to the outputs, winning, for example, more medals. That is what Simon Shibley's presentation will be about in the next presentation. The 9 pillars are on the input level, pillar 1, on the throughput level, all the other 8 pillars. And we assume that by investing in an elite sports policy through the 9 pillars, we can get an improved elite sports climate. Important is also that we include the feedback from stakeholders like elite athletes, coaches, and performance directors. A second key point of our study is just that we used mixed methods research, which means that we do not just describe elite sport policy, but by trying to measure it, we also try to get some more insights into an elite sports policy. And then a third is what I just said, the involvement of the stakeholders. To give you an overall idea of our methods, so we measured 126 critical success factors in the beginning by 212 questions through an inventory, and that gave us a return of over 3,000 pages of data to analyze. And that is why we are not ready to have a book finalized by now. An elite sport climate survey, where we included from the different nations over 3,000 elite athletes. Now, how we defined an elite athlete in our study was that we took the criterion of a top 16 athlete that participated in international competition, or in a country, an athlete that is supported by the national system or that is funded, for example. So that is basically the definition of an elite athlete that we used. The coaches of these athletes was our sample of over 1,300 coaches, and 241 performance directors were included. The focus of our study is only on Olympic sports. We did not include non-Olympic sports, and only the able-bodied sport. And as I said, we focus on the national level. I will skip the slide on country-by-country comparison, but the key point of it is that we do have a big difference in the sample between our different countries. And therefore, to take into account for that, we had to take into account the levels of these athletes. So when there were significant differences in some pillars or some critical success factors, we looked only at the top 16 athletes to have a comparable sample. Same for coaches, to have the higher level coaches compare only the higher level coaches there where it was relevant. But it just shows it makes it more complicated. What I basically want to have in the introduction is that you understand that whatever we tell here about Spliss, it is not just me presenting it, it is not just the consortium group presenting it, but it is a teamwork of different people, and I would also like to mention these people. It is a collaboration of a total of 58 researchers from the different nations and 33 policy organizations. And To be honest, we did not have much coordination funding. Our coordination funding was very limited. But at the end, we calculated what was the total project cost. So we asked the different nations what they have invested in it, and we asked our different partners what they have invested in the analysis, and it brought us to a total project cost of 1.2 million euros that we as a consortium group have had to realize with less than 100,000 euros. It also took us 4 full-time jobs during 2 years of coordination just for the analysis, which is a large investment from our own universities and the different partners that have been involved. So I would like to introduce to you the different partners from the different nations that are from Australia, Hans Westerbeek and Camila Broquet. From Brazil, Maria Teresa Bohm and her whole team, also Leandro, and a few other people that are too much to mention them all here. From my own country, I led the study, but Stephanie de Croo collaborated with me with the local data collection. From Wallonia, Thierry Ziens and Mathieu Winan. From Leuven. From Canada, David Legg, also here in this room, and his team of researchers collaborating with him. From Denmark, Henrik Brandt and the whole team, Lautoft, Rasmus Storm, and Nina Mortensen, collaborating with them. From France, Patrick Mignon from the INSEP. From Finland, Jari Lamsa, Mikko, and Jarmo, collaborating with the data collection. From Estonia, one person, Eric Hani, working together with us. From Korea, Yunya Ku. From Japan, Yoshiyuko Mano and Huriakui Funahashi. Do I say it right, Hiro? And your whole team, because we know that you did not do this all alone. From the Netherlands, Maarten van Bottenburg, Bake Dijk. From Northern Ireland, Paul Donnelly, Jamie and Simon Shibli. And from Portugal, Pedro and Rui that collaborated on it. From Spain, Ana Villanova and Edward, who is here also somewhere, and Laura, Sylvia, Adria. From Switzerland, Hippolyte and his team with Marco and Andreas. So you can see it is a wide study with a lot of researchers collaborating in it. But also important is that we could not have done this analysis of more than 3,000 pages all by ourselves. And as we did not have funding to set it up, we had a lot of collaboration from different researchers. So in the different pillars, Stephanie de Croo, Jasper Truijens were involved in the first 2 pillars. Bake Dijk and Mikko were involved in the first stage analysis and the development of the pillar 3. Pillars 4 and 6 was led by Hans, but with the collaboration of Camila Broquet from Australia. Pillar 7 was Poppy Sotiaradu and Ben Corbett that helped us with the analysis of that pillar. Pillar 8 was David Barrett collaborating with Simon on that pillar. And Pillar 9, Jari Lamsa. So altogether, although we had such a limited funding, we had the help of so many researchers, and that made it possible for us to analyze the data. And to answer the question, why do you want to win more medals? As we already told in the introduction, that is one of the key themes of this conference. So I would all like to welcome you to this conference, and I hope you will enjoy it. If you want further information, you can look at the website of Spliss. I would warmly like to welcome all the keynote presenters of this session, Barry Julian, Poppy, Sotiaradi, Paul de Knop, the Spliss countries, all the best practices that are basically in the parallel session B, the panel discussion presenters and the abstract presentations. And for your information, there are also some workshops taking place. One of them is Infostrada. One of them was with the sports policy makers that was on registration in advance. And if anyone would be interested in developing such a project also for the disability sport, then Jennifer Wong will coordinate this workshop this afternoon. Thank you for your attention.
Veerle, thank you very much. It's quite impressive what you put together.